Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that has caused a lot of people grief, and I want to make a video about it so I don't have to keep explaining this whole issue of texting and what RCS is. So we're going to go through that today. There are some very key points that I think will really help you. There's a couple of stumbling blocks that everybody makes, so I want to clarify that. I want to discuss what RCS, or Rich Communication Services, is, how you get it, how you set it up, and why that is so important for texting. And we're going to talk about that today. So thanks so much for coming, and hopefully this will be helpful. I'm Ron Brown with Tech for Senior, where we help seniors understand technology and help them with communication. I want to thank everyone for coming, and we sure appreciate that like and subscribe. I want to thank all those people that have donated over the last year to our coffee fund. It certainly helps our nonprofit group keep going. All right, when discussing texting, I always find it easier to go back to the very beginning, when cell phones first were released to the public in 1983. Let's go way back. Now, if you're a senior, you'll remember this. If you aren't a senior, well, you'll learn something. So if you go back to 1983, when cell phones were first released, as in this diagram you're seeing here, I put an old Nokia phone there, and you'll see that we have, of course, voice communication now, and we talk to a cell tower. This, of course, is done through a phone number. So yes, we did have cell phones, but this is 10 years before the internet. We didn't have email. We didn't have websites. There was no internet or anything like that when cell phones first came out. It was simply you picked the phone up and you didn't have it plugged into a landline, and you were able to make a phone call. This was wireless technology, and quite different than it is today. Now, the other thing that was very different about this was phone calls were expensive. In other words, you got paid, you got charged per phone call. No plans. We didn't have cell phone plans then. They just charged you the number of phone calls you made, multiplied it by how many you did in a month, and sent you a bill. So it was expensive. Now, over time, cell phone plans did exist, but that's later on. So in the early days, cell phones weren't as popular as the companies wanted them to be because of cost. So they came up with a unique idea that they would bring in a thing called texting. And of course was developed by the phone companies. Yes, the phone companies, the wireless company, developed this concept called texting, where you could actually text somebody a message, an SMS text that you could text through the telephone line, through your communication line, your phone number, and text someone a short message. And that's why they came up with SMS. Now, this was a great deal for the phone companies because, well, it was much cheaper than making a voice call. Well, it was much cheaper to the customers than making a voice call. They still charged for it. And the amount of bandwidth used up in the texting was so small, it was a good deal for the phone company. So they came up with the idea of texting, which really increased the number of people using this new communication type of machine, the cell phone. All right, so the key takeaway point I want you to remember is the fact that there was no internet. We had no WhatsApp or any text messaging. There was no email, no nothing. But the texting was done over your existing voice line. So you remember that. This is an important point. So now we move on. And of course, 10 years later, in 1993, the internet was created, released to the public. And of course, the rest is history. And then, of course, we developed social media, email, websites, and things all changed, which of course we have now. But it wasn't until 2007 when a big event occurred that would change the way the world was today. And the announcement, of course, was in 2007 when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone. The iPhone was a new concept, crazy concept. Steve Jobs said, we're going to make this a smartphone and we're going to connect it to the internet. And we're going to charge you, this is going to be an expensive phone, and we're going to charge you $1,000 for this. I thought the man was crazy. Who would spend $1,000 on a phone just to connect it to the internet? Well, boy, was I wrong, eh? So for sure. So the iPhone was quite a bit different type of cell phone. And it changed how cell phones were made and how they were used. So what were the differences in the iPhone? Well, the first thing Steve Jobs said is this phone is going to be able to be connected to Wi-Fi. Now, by this time, we had routers and Wi-Fi and all sorts of stuff like that. So he had a radio receiver and transmitter in there that would connect to Wi-Fi, as you'll see in the diagram here, connect to Wi-Fi either as a public or private Wi-Fi connection. So this was great. That, of course, if you're not connected to Wi-Fi and you're out driving around and you don't have Wi-Fi, he wanted this also to be connected through something new, something the phone cell companies had to create, and this was a data stream. And this was a data stream that was unlike your voice communication. This was a digital data stream that would send data to and from the internet. So this, as you'll see on the diagram here, this is a different stream from voice communication, and this is what we now know as our data plan. And it had never been done before, and this was, of course, created, and this is a separate link to your cell phone. And the third thing he said is we're going to have our own messaging service, iMessages. But of course, that wasn't SMS. This is a different link that the cell phone companies had to create, and this was a link for iMessages. So the iPhone could communicate with other iPhones through iMessages. So we now had a new smartphone being developed. We were going to be able to connect through Wi-Fi. We're going to be connect through a data plan, and we're going to be able to send text messages through iMessage to other Apple devices. And that was what really changed the world and started the smartphone revolution that we have. So this is a key takeaway point that you need to understand. So after this technology was developed, and of course many other companies started making smartphones, we developed another product in the cloud called text messaging. And this is in the cloud. This is the ability to send messages within an app. And this is WhatsApp is an example of this. Facebook Messenger is an example. Google Messages. There's over 200 different messaging apps that are available in the world today. And it depends what part of the world and what country you're in of which one is going to work. But the concept here, let's take WhatsApp, is that my friend I want to send a message to WhatsApp would have the WhatsApp app installed. I would have the WhatsApp, and then we can send messages back and forth. Just like a text message back, the old SMS text messaging. Remember way back what I discussed? This is all done now between these apps in the cloud. It has nothing to do with your cell phone provider or the old SMS texting or iMessages service that your cell phone companies run. This occurs in the cloud within these apps, and this is called text messaging. Now, why is this important? Why am I making a big deal about this? Well, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that, of course, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It doesn't matter what phone you're using. These messaging services all work. Doesn't matter whether you're using an Apple device or an Android device. But it did back, remember, let's go back and look at this diagram. We have, of course, SMS text messaging, remember? And we have a separate service for iMessages. Two don't talk to each other. Rats! So that is a big problem. But within the messaging service, within the text messaging that is in this cloud, it doesn't matter. You can talk back and forth and go on and on about that. So why does that make a big difference? Well, this is the big factor here, and it has to do with two-factor authentication. In the process of getting that second factor sent to you, it's always sent through your cell phone line, the SMS or iMessages. You're going to be getting it through it back to your phone, because your phone is actually the second factor. In other words, it is your second factor because you're logged in either through a password or your facial ID or a thumbprint, whatever it is your second factor. So it's not going to be sent over text messaging. So all that stuff you're doing with text messaging has nothing to do with two-factor authentication. So in our current new security standards, which we're encouraging everybody to use, two-factor authentication will not work with text messaging. All right, that's now the second takeaway, which is very interesting, is your phone number. This is exactly why when you travel, and when you're traveling to different parts of the world and different countries, we used to always teach, just buy a local SIM card, pop a local SIM card in, and you'll be good to go, and you can use one of the local plans of the country. But of course, now remember this, with your text messaging, it's no problem because you're going to be able to text message back and forth because it's not related to a phone number. But your two-factor authentication is. So if you go and you switch out that SIM card and you put a different SIM card in there with a different phone number, you will not be able to get your text messaging coming back to your phone to give you that second factor to get into your bank account or whatever when you're traveling. So you need to know that and be very careful with that, because it's you don't want to be heading off to Australia. You go to the bank in Australia and you can't get your second factor and you can't get your money. So be careful with that. That's a really big issue. You must know the difference between SMS texting messaging and what text messaging is in the cloud. So those are two different things based on two different technologies, okay? And finally, they got their act together over the last 2 or 3 years. And last year in 2003, Apple announced that they would participate in RCS services, and that should be implemented by most carriers. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what RCS is. Now, if you look at this diagram, we're going to go over specifically the different technologies RCS uses. RCS uses a combination of your data plan and Wi-Fi. It's not going back over the old SMS system. It's a much bigger, it's more secure, and there's a number of new features with RCS that works. First of all, you can see typing indicators when someone's typing, and you know that they're actually sending you a message. You can read receipts, you can do file sharing, and you can even have group chats, all on RCS messaging. So what I wanted to talk to you about, remember my original question was, how do you get this? How do you install it? How does it work? And I'm going to show you that now. And I think the best way to go about that is I'm going to take my phone now and I'm going to do a little video about how you get it and what it is. So let me show you this now. All right, this is my Pixel 8 Pro. Let's come down to the messaging app. We'll come down here and click the messaging app. And now from the messaging app, we're going to go up to the top and click the icon with your picture on it. And we're going to come down to the messages settings. From there, you're going to see at the top, it says RCS chats, and that means it's installed on your phone. Let's click this and see where we go. And here you'll see my network is Rogers network. It says I'm connected and I have RCS chats turned on. At the bottom, I have also turned on that if RCS is not available as a service, I can then switch it to, it will be sent as an SMS or MMS text. This is on the Android version. Now, I want you to remember that RCS is a carrier-based service, and you do not need to do anything to enable the service. This is, you don't put any software or anything like that on your phone. This is carrier-based and will be initiated. So if you have an Android or an iPhone, you need to make sure that the carrier service you're using does have RCS as a service. Now, on your iPhone, you must have iOS 18 or over, and you also have to make sure that your carrier has enabled RCS. So on your iPhone, you'll see this screen, and you'll see turn on RCS messaging. And here you'll see the appropriate buttons to turn on to make sure this service is active on your phone. It's Ron Brown with Tech for Senior. In summary, RCS is a carrier-based service, new coming out for iOS, and it will allow communication between Android and Apple devices. It's more secure, and you'll be seeing a lot more about this as we move forward. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you. We'd sure appreciate that like and subscribe. Until we see you again, have a great day.